Ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the Let's Talk Barbershop podcast, we've got Jackson from the Newfangled Four. What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. This is awesome. Thanks for having me. I think this is the first time I've ever been asked to talk on a podcast of any kind for a barbershop one, so I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know this would be your first one. That's awesome. I guess the Gold Medal Moments podcast was probably 10 years ago, and I don't think you were jumping in just yet then.
No,
right?
not quite. I know they had, I think they had Jake. I want to say Jake or Joey, but yeah, I didn't get asked, and I was a little sad, but it was also like, it's totally fine. so yeah, when you asked, I was like, yeah, of course, I'd love to share my story.
Yeah, we've had Joey on before, but that is the only one up until right now from Newfangled that we've had. So
Nice.
We're going to try to work our way through. We got to get Jake on, and Marcus on. So
Nice.
I'll work on that angle a little bit later.
Yeah.
But do a little fact or fiction. Does that sound fun?
Yeah, of course.
All right, here we go. Your name is Jackson.
Yes and no. Fiction. It's Jackson. The pronunciation is Jackson Niebrigi, but I don't blame people for just not trying because it's a weird last name. So.
Right, I'm sure your name gets butchered by the telemarketers just like mine does.
Yeah. Telemarketers are just envelopes, or when you get like the random junk mail with just different spellings, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. 100%.
Right on. The Newfangled Four's first score was 78.4.
Gosh, was it our first score? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. It might have been. I feel like it was. I want to say fiction though. I feel like it was lower because our first score was in 2013 spring to qualify for the collegiate contest. Maybe it was a 78.4. Actually, that sounds right. I'm gonna say fact.
Okay. I don't know. I made that number up completely. So we'll both go with fiction because the likelihood of it being that is pretty small, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. We didn't improve that much. I remember our first college score was in the 80s, but that was at collegiate. So I think we had like a 76 or 7 or something, I want to say.
Right on.
Yeah.
Next fact or fiction is you have 3 older brothers.
Fiction. I have one older sister.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool. Good to know. To know. And you live somewhere in California, is that right?
That is fact. Very much so.
All right, good. We're doing pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Listen, I think everybody on the show wants to know how you got into this crazy lifestyle of ours. And I call it a lifestyle more than a hobby because it pretty much takes over at least 5 weeks a year. So,
Very true.
Tell the people why we started doing this.
Sure. Yeah. Mine's kind of like it has multiple layers to it, so I've tried to always figure out the best way to craft the story. But here's my very first take of it. First take, funny. So I first heard about Barbershop. I was singing in a youth choir, a local youth choir, back when I used to live in Santa Clarita in California. It was called the Santa Clarita Children's Chorus, and I think I went back and realized later on, but we were invited to sing on a local chapter show. I just was, I must have been 9 or 10 in that range, and I just thought of it as, oh, that's the show we're singing on. We sang on the first half of the show. We got to see the rest of the show, and we watched the chorus. But there was also a quartet they had perform. Quartet is called The Perfect Gentlemen. They're a show quartet out here in California. They don't really compete as that foursome. They've all had different forays in barbershop and BHS in small ways, and they were all Dapper Dans at Disneyland. That's kind of where they all met. But they put on an amazing show. The lead at the time was Dan Jordan, the lead of the New Tradition 1985 champs, and so they put on this just fantastic show, and I remember just being completely blown away as a kid by it. And we met them afterwards and bought their newest CD at the time, and I was just obsessed with that CD. I listened to it all the time. And then after a little while, I wanted to do more in music, and I was singing in a couple different children's choruses, and I was like, oh, I don't want to I remember at one of them they started making me learn theory, music theory of reading notes and all this stuff, and it was just really hard, and I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to sing, so I stopped doing that. But I also was like, I was lucky enough in 5th grade to get to do band. So at that point, I was like, oh, I want to try band, and I wanted to play drums. My mother said, no, there's no way you're doing drums, because she did not want to have drums banging around the house. So I picked the next logical loud thing, which was trumpet. And so I picked up the trumpet in 5th grade, and I kind of stopped singing, and I transitioned to being instrumentalist more. And then we're going to fast forward to high school. I went to an arts high school. Actually, no, sorry. I'm going to come back to high school. Let's go to college. So I started doing trumpet all through high school into college, and I actually got my degree in trumpet performance from Cal State Long Beach. When I was at Cal State Long Beach, in the dorms, and at the music department, that's where I met Jake Tickner, my bass in Newfangled 4. And so Jake was a vocal major there. Marcus was also, our new baritone, was also a music major there as well, but we can get to that later. But yeah, so I met Jake. We were in the same dorms, and on my iPod, I had that Perfect Gentleman CD. I remember I was like walking through, to classes, and I was scrolling through my iPod, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this CD. And I started playing it, and I still remembered all the songs. Like the lyrics are still stuck in my head. And so I went to Jake because I knew he obviously was singing, and I was like, hey, do you ever sing? Somehow I don't know how it came about conversation, or maybe I just talked to him about it, and I said, hey man, have you ever heard of Barbershop? And Jake was like, yeah, I sang Barbershop in high school. I still sing it. I'm like, what? You know about this thing? He's like, yeah, I do it. I still sing. And at the time, he was singing with Masters of Harmony, MOH. And so he was like, yeah, I actually sing with this chorus on Wednesday nights called the Masters of Harmony. So right here, I'm going to cut and go back to high school. When I was in high school, my 10th grade chemistry teacher was a man by the name of Gail Sherrod. He was a member of MOH. And I remember while I was there in high school, in 10th grade, they had just done their 2008 set, and the video came up, and so he played it for the class. And I remember talking with him a little bit about Perfect Gentleman after class, and something like, oh, I heard about stuff like this, blah, blah, blah. But and I had watched the video. So it was so surreal. Fast forward back to that moment when Jake said, yeah, I sing at MOH. I went to him and I said, do you know a man by the name of Gail Sherrod? He said, yeah, he still sings the chorus. So that night, or that next Wednesday, I go with Jake to Masters of Harmony rehearsal, and I get super hooked on it. I see Gail Sherrod there, my 10th grade chemistry teacher, and I was like, oh my gosh, how surreal is this? I haven't seen this guy in 4 years, still sings, still does all this stuff. And it was very special because Gail unfortunately passed a few years ago at this point. I want to say at least maybe in the 5-year range. But it was so nice to actually just catch up with him and talk with him. And we sung together, and fortunate enough to win a few medals, some gold medals with him, which was really, really, really cool. So it's so weird. That's kind of it's a convoluted story. It's got many layers to it. That's why I put it that way. But it's so cool how it kind of like a seed was planted, but I was a kid, and then it got reignited as an adult. And along the way, I had different things happen that kind of made me remember how much I love Barbershop and why we do it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it for sure.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, my takeaway from that is like, you got out of it because you didn't want to learn music theory, and then you went to music college to learn music theory.
Exactly. That's how I tell that story too, where it's like, I didn't want to learn music theory, and then I picked up an instrument where you have to learn how to read music to play an instrument, which is learning music theory. So,
no, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Very smart of me.
There's obviously the famous joke in the Newfangled set that, your parents got you voice lessons, and is that any of that true?
Not voice lessons, actually. I've never taken a single solo voice lesson. I've been lucky enough to where I just have a really good ear and a good disposition to singing. I was lucky enough, again, with the children's choruses, I would just kind of listen and pay attention. And then when I got being under, fast forward to last 10 years, singing in both Westminster and Masters, and then having Justin Miller direct both for a time. And I just took every week as a voice lesson. Whenever they give me anything, I just worked on it in the car all the time. I would be driving around in my car, and I'd be listening to learning tracks, and I'd experiment with my voice just in terms of how high can I sing, how weird can I sing, because I also like to mimic things. I always liked doing impressions when I was younger, and to me, singing is also just like how to sing in the right spot when you coach people. For me, I always took it as just trying to sound like them in terms of an impression. And my rule of thumb was always, if it hurt, don't do it. But other than that, keep trying to sound like the person you're going to sound like, and eventually you're never going to sound just like them. You're going to find your own voice. But no, I never took formal voice lessons. I took a lot of trumpet lessons. I took trumpet lessons for 12 years, something like that. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all definitely tell that you have a good mimic voice. We heard, of course, the Big Bopper on stage over the years.
Yes.
A musician in a smoky jazz hall. We've heard a couple of those things. Even a gramophone. Those two. So,
Thanks, man.
Yeah, we can tell that, man. So were your parents musical, or you just kind of came out and just were a musical guy?
Yeah, I'm kind of the odd one out. I mean, so my father, he did sing in church choir growing up, and so he had a pretty good ear. He had a very good ear. So if like I wanted to, I always wanted to get a chance to sing with him in the chorus. That never happened, but he never wanted to go to rehearsals anyway. But he always had a pretty good ear. He was never super formally trained. I think he could play some piano, but very, very slowly, and not with. He couldn't really sight read and anything along those lines. My mother is not very musical, but she says that my mother was adopted too. So her birth father, once she kind of found that family, she had learned that her birth father was so I guess my genetic grandfather was a saxophone player professionally. So we think maybe some of that came from there too.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of it has just been like I'm kind of a little bit of the odd hat in that regard in the family. But I'm very lucky to have parents and family members who have just been nothing but supportive the entire time I've been doing music and trying to do it and perform. Very lucky there. So.
Yeah, no, that's very cool, man. Can you tell our audience just something weird that nobody knows about you?
Something weird that nobody knows about me. I have some weird random factoids. I can juggle, not like 4 or 5 or 6, but like if you give me 3 tennis balls, that's a random quick factoid.
Yeah.
What else? I love to play video games. It's getting more and more open out there as I share with the world. I'm trying to do more Twitch streaming. I love that. That's not that weird or random though. Let's see here. My favorite animal is a beluga whale, the white whale, just because when I was a kid I did a book report on it. Our book report. I did like a report on an animal, and so I was like, "Hey, that's a weird random factoid." Gosh, I hope that's enough.
No, very cool, man. Fine. No, very cool. We don't like rehearsed answers on this podcast anyway, man. It's kind of, it's meant to sound like we're just having a beer, talking about barbershop and stuff. So that's good. This one's good too. If you were going to die tomorrow, what would your last request for a meal be?
Oh, that is a great one. Okay. All right. All right, it would probably just be like a freaking, just like a fat ribeye steak, obviously like from a traditional amazing steakhouse, medium rare.
Yeah.
Some mashed potatoes. I would get all the potatoes. I love potatoes. So mashed potatoes and baked potato. And then if I had room, I would try and figure out also randomly, because it's one of my favorite things ever, just like a double, an In-N-Out double made my even though I work there, I still love the food. So
okay, you work at In-N-Out.
I do. I do currently. That's my day job.
Awesome. So let's go back just a little bit to your very first barbershop quartet experience.
For sure. Yeah. So my very first quartet experience. So after I joined Masters of Harmony and then later Westminster in 2012 is kind of when I officially joined both groups. That year I was like, okay, I really want to sing. No, I'm sorry. Was it 2011? It was 2011, not 2012. It's important for me to remember these things. 2011 is when I joined both, and I was like, oh, I want to sing in a quartet. So I got a quartet together to sing and try and qualify for the college contest. And I think at the time you needed a 71. The quartet was called Game Time. That's the name I came up with it, which I was just like, it's game time. And I don't. There's no one that I think the barbershop community would recognize in that quartet in terms of like names. Um, they're all guys who sang with Westminster at the time. One of them,
Okay.
the one you might know the best, is a guy by the name of Keith Jones. You could find him on the front row for most of the Westminster contest vids if I pointed him out. There's a great shot when we did Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. We get to this big crescendo. At last, with the morning starlight, and it cuts to him, and he took his hat off, and he kind of crumbled it in his hand in this epic spasm. I'm like, that's Keith. Heck yeah, man. There you go. So, but yeah, so, we sang, and I'll never forget, I was nervous. The songs we sang were Love Me and the World Is Mine and After You've Gone. And I remember I sang, and it was in this tiny little high school auditorium for our division contest that year. And I'm like, cool, we're going to go. After we get off stage, I'm like, sweet, I think we did. I think we're going to go sing at the college contest. I'm really excited. And we got a 61, which was 10 whole points below where we needed to be. And then very quickly, I was like, it's, I mean, trust me, it's not, it's just funny. It's just, it's just kind of everyone starts somewhere, right? And it's just more of like, I had an expectation in my brain. I'm like, oh, that was probably really good. And I was like, oh. And then I went back and watched footage later on. I'm like, oh, I hear it. But on stage, it's a totally different sensation. Yeah. So that was really funny. And then
I hate it when that happens. Yeah.
It's the worst. Yeah. And we tell our guys all the time, and I tell anyone when you go on stage, don't trust. You want to sing in tune, but like, don't try and trust your ears necessarily. Trust how it feels. There's a difference there.
Right.
But yeah, so
before you jump on to the next endeavor,
yeah.
Did you sing lead in Game Time?
Yes, I did sing lead. I have sung lead in every quartet I have ever competed with. Yes, I was immediately put on lead when I got to Masters. I was voice tested, put on lead pretty quickly. I would love to sing baritone if I had more lows. Maybe as I get older, baritone is so much fun. Just because.
It is the best part, isn't it?
It's definitely the most fun part. I would definitely say it's the best part. Yeah, and even I sing lead. I will always argue this, and people can fight me on this. I will always say lead is the hardest part to sing, easiest to learn, hardest to sing. Baritone is the hardest to learn, but the most fun to sing, in my opinion. Because once you learn,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, once you learn all those kinds of intervals and weird things, man, it's just, I don't know, it's so much fun. It's just kind of fitting the notes in there. It's just the best. But yeah, I sang
There used to be like a 3-tier system we talked about where we put the parts in order of hardness, right? So it's easier to sing tenor really crappy than any other part, right? So if you started singing tenor with like 3 octaves, you'd probably be pretty golden most of the time, right? So, and then if you're in like a medium skilled quartet, it's probably easiest to sing, say, bass, and the hardest to sing baritone because the pitch floats around a little,
for sure.
And if you're a really, really good quartet, it's probably hardest to sing lead and easiest to sing baritone. So I don't know, but it's kind of some weird stuff we talk about sometimes.
No, I like that. That's I never even thought of it that way, but that's true because it's just kind of like the better the groups get, right? The more you kind of find like certain aspects of it are harder to fulfill. It's like when you get to lead at a super high level quartet, well, it's like, what's the difference between you guys and other ones? It's like at a certain point, it comes down to what's the character of the quartet. And it starts with the lead and song choice. And then from there, the rest of the quartet can bring, but it's like, if the lead's not on it, it's going to be tough to separate yourself from the pack in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can kind of hide yourself, like if you're doing like a sing with the champs thing, I always find that it's easiest to sing baritone.
Right.
Because like you can double a note here and there if you don't quite know it perfectly.
Yeah.
Whereas like on lead, you can't play that game.
Yeah.
You are the lead. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry I went off on that nerdy tangent, dude. I'm sorry.
Love it. That's what this is about, man.
So Game Time. Yeah, no, I know. No, but I'm a geek and I love it. So Game Time ends, I presume, for some reason.
Yeah, it ends because we didn't qualify, and then the next year, something like different guys went different ways, and then so at the same time, there was another quartet that Joey and Jake were in. That same contest, they did qualify for the 2011 collegiate contest. The quartet was called the Harmadillos, which is still one of my favorite names of all time. And and Joey was singing lead. So Joey was on lead and Jake was on bass, and they had 2 other guys on the outside parts. And then they went to Kansas City and competed, and I think they got, I want to say it's 14th at the competition for college. And then the next
Cool,
year,
cool.
yeah, so the next year, their tenor didn't want to do it. He left. And I was like the most logical lead choice. And so I ended up singing with them on lead, and Joey went to tenor. And then
Right.
we didn't qualify for international in 2012. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, well, one part changed, and then Joey went to tenor, which he's literally won a collegiate gold on. So where's the problem here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I was like, cool. Next year I'm gonna get better. That's as simple as that. I just need to get better. And so about that time, then our baritone, and we kept the name the Harmadillos. We're like, cool, blah blah blah. And then at that time, the baritone left, and then Ryan started coming around to Westminster rehearsals. He was living in Vegas, and he, which is for those who don't know, Vegas, Southern California to Vegas is about a 4-hour drive, so it's not terrible. By most standards of people I've met in the Midwest, when they go to some of these chorus rehearsals, they're like, "Oh yeah, I live 5 hours away." I'm like, "Oh, okay, wow, that's impressive."
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know he was from Vegas either. So,
Yeah. He was from Vegas. He was driving out for a while every week from Vegas, just because that's how he was like. The one thing he was like, I want to do this. I want to sing with Westminster. I don't know what else I want to do, but I know I want to do that. And I was like, dude, heck yeah. And we were singing on the Glow after Westminster rehearsal, and he was singing baritone, and I got the four of us together. We sang some tags, and I'm like, this sounds pretty good. I was like, and I remember looking at him, and I was like, how old are you? Because he has a deeper voice than me, and I figured maybe he's like 23, 24. He's a year younger than me. So I was like, my God, sweet. We have a couple of years to try and figure this out. So the quartet was born. And at that point, this kind of just turns into how the Newfangled Four kind of started, basically, because that was my next quartet, pretty much. There was one quartet I was trying to get started after Game Time and before I joined Harmadillos, which eventually became Newfangled Four, called the Undergrads. And we were trying to get something going, and I liked that name. And it was actually on bass was Kyle Williamson, who's the bass of the Summertimers. I don't know if anyone's familiar with them, but yeah. And Flightline, also Flightline. So also now a college champ. But so we had a couple rehearsals, and then I remember there was just like not communication happening for a while. And I remember I was just like trying to communicate, hearing nothing. And eventually I was like, well, I'm going to go sing with these guys because we're communicating, we're talking all this stuff. So I ended up going and singing with them. But that was pretty much the only other quartet experience I had until I got to Newfangled Four. So I can go into that if you want.
No, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I guess a question I try to normally ask is like where the name came from.
Yeah, for sure. You're actually asking the right guy. I came up with the name. I was on my computer. So the original idea behind the quartet that we really liked, I remember Ryan and I especially, we would go back and talk about like old bluegrass student union charts or Boston Common or charts from, but like not even their most well-known stuff, just stuff that is good that no one sings anymore. And we were like, why doesn't anyone sing these charts? These charts are great. So the reason Newfangled came up is I was on my computer and I was on like thesaurus.com and I was looking up words for like old and new and, obviously synonyms and stuff and just coming up, blah, blah, blah. And then the word Newfangled came up. And I was like, that's a good word. And I remember my grandmother when I was a kid, she would say things all the time of like this newfangled contraption, like that word, right? So it's like a good old word that's kind of like angry at this thing I don't quite understand. And I liked that part of it, So I was just like, the other part of it, the Newfangled Four, came from I also kind of I was at that point, and I still kind of see this. I see just a lot of quartets. Their name is like it's like an exclamation. It's like a one-word thing, which is fine.
Yeah,
those are good names. OC Times and the Vocal Spectrums and the more modern stuff like First Take. It's like a declaration thing. And I just kind of missed. Yeah. I kind of missed like the Four Rascals or the Four Renegades or the just like a name.
Yeah,
Like I love the Summertimers because it's just kind of like. It's not Summertimers. It's the Summertimers Good Time Harmony Band, I think is the actual full name or close to it. I mean, I'm like, that's a great name. I kind of just miss those names. And so I remember I just said the Newfangled Four, and I went through all these things of like, I want to make sure the name, when it's called off, like for the representing Far Western District, the Newfangled, like it has a good cadence to it, the Newfangled Four, and so it has all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I like the name. I bring it to the guys. And they're all like, that's all right. And like most quartet names, it's kind of like, it's all right. Do we have anything better? No, we got to submit the forms. All right, I guess we're calling ourselves the Newfangled Four. So,
Yeah,
and the
no,
name
no,
stuck.
that's very cool, man.
Yeah, so that's kind of the name.
Very cool, very cool. Uh, so I have to confess, like my first time seeing you guys, the first thing that I heard, I think, was "Cottage for Sale,"
Ooh, good one.
and I was like, and I think it was "Dinah" was the second song. Some crazy, might have been backwards. It might have been "Dinah" first, and then "Cottage for Sale," and I was like, wow, they're loud. Very cool. I didn't get comedy out of it though.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
for sure.
And when we had Joey Buss on the podcast, I was like, "Why'd you guys decide to be a comedy quartet?" And he was like, "Have you seen our singing scores?" I guess that's what led to the comedy quartet aspect of it. But I think it's pretty funny that one of you became a singing judge, despite that. So
yeah. No, it's yeah.
That is pretty funny to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to elaborate on that or not. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Elaborate on that.
No, all it was just, I mean, that's funny that Joey says, like, have you seen our singing scores? This is a very Joey Buss answer. Joey is a hilarious dude.
Yeah.
From my point of view, it was more of, I always wanted to just, ballads are why I got into Barbershop. When going back to my story about how I got into Barbershop and talking to Jake and going to my first MOH rehearsal, pretty much like right after that first Masters of Harmony rehearsal, I went home, went on YouTube, Googled Barbershop. First thing I heard, because it was right after Stormfront just won, was Light a Rose, Stormfront. And as a man who, my dad's favorite musical of all time was The Music Man, so I grew up watching it a lot, and I loved it too. That was so funny to me because I understood the joke. Immediately, I laughed wholeheartedly. And then as a musician, I understood, oh, they're combining the two together, and that's an amazing joke. But then right after that, I found the next thing, which was Crossroads' Lucky Old Son. To this day, the most transformational Barbershop video for me is still that video.
Right. Not comedy.
Not comedy. Yeah. I mean, I still love the comedy, but like I'll never forget just watching that video and being like, this is just four dudes singing. The amount of sound, volume, not just like volume loud, but volume like three-dimensional space volume they fill of sound is absolutely incredible and sounds so easy and amazing. I was just like, this is how do you do this? I would love to try and do this, right? And so, but yeah, so I got into Barbershop because of ballads and stuff like that, and I still love the comedy. We originally were not a comedy quartet. We transitioned more into that. And I still kind of say, like, yeah, you can put us under comedy. I think it's a little more of like, we just like to entertain. What happened was after we won college in 2013, the collegiate quartet contest, and then that fall we won our Far Western District contest, we started getting a lot of gigs, which was awesome. And, big reason why, especially Jake and I at music college, music school, we were like, hey, we want to do this for a living. That's kind of like the goal. So we started getting a lot of gigs. Like, sweet, that's great. If somehow we can turn this into like part of our living, that would be awesome. But we were singing all of our contest stuff for like all the shows, and our voices were tired, and it was just getting exhausting. And we're like, we need to make these shows more like shows, not just like recitals. Because recitals are great, but people are paying and going to a show because they want to be entertained. They want to, as Billy Joel says, to forget about life for a while. They want to not remember, they want to forget where they are. So I kind of, I remembered that Perfect Gentleman CD. For me, that was foundational. Joey is just such a freaking ham as a human being. He had a lot of great jokes, and we would just let him talk. But we were all kind of like, well, we can kind of do this too, maybe not to his level immediately, but like we can do jokes and have bits and things. So slowly we just started adding in stuff to our set that was a lot easier to sing and a lot more fun. And I remember at first I was a little worried because I'm like, well, I feel bad. These people paid us for a show, but like these songs aren't that hard, And then I realized, but they'd come up after us after these shows, after we finally crafted these shows, and they were like, that was one of the best shows I've seen. Like I would have so many people say, I was so funny, I had the best time. And I'm like, cool, whatever. This must be good then, which is a good thing because now we can repeat this and have it be something that people want to see. So we just started transitioning out of it because it was something where the four of us could access that on stage and be completely truthful in our performance and who we are. It didn't feel like we had to really work hard to get to that point. Whereas with like a ballad
No,
like
I definitely
Cottage for
agree,
Sale,
man.
yeah,
I think you found your niche.
yeah,
And I think it's ultra efficient too, because and the reason I say that is, a cottage style is not really something you want to sing on a youth camp. You know,
yes, very true.
but like all your other, all your contest material, let's call it nowadays,
Yeah,
um, is perfectly consumable and fun for a youth camp, for a show, for a contest. It kind of works for everything. So it's super efficient. If anything, you get a lot of reps out of it,
yeah.
and score more points. So I think that's pretty genius of you guys.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where, for us, I obviously don't. Joey says that's just funny. He says, "Look at our singing scores." I always want our singing to be paramount. We don't want to ever let the singing go away. But he's not wrong. Our performance scores just skyrocketed the more we started doing that stuff. So now we're kind of backtracking a little bit and working even more diligently on our singing, trying to make sure that tighten up the screws, as we like to say. Well,
Yeah, very cool.
yeah.
Now I know you guys used to work with Will Ajax pretty regularly. Do you have a set of coaches that are your go-to, or material writers, or anything like that?
Yeah. So when we first started, we didn't really get a lot of coaching until a few years into what we did. For whatever reason, we just didn't do it. We should have. We had plenty of awesome people out here to help coach us. But yeah, Will, I would say, is still our number one. Will Lagos is our number one coach for sure. I'm very thankful because obviously he sings in our chorus every week. We sing in the same chorus in Westminster. And he was starting to emerge as this guy who understood performance. For him, it was like Justin would always have him say, "Will, can you say a few words to kind of like your thoughts on this?" Because he's just so descriptive in his and the way he talks about the imagery of a song or the text of a song and understanding the story of what we should get into. And so at key moments during a contest run up for Westminster, Will would speak to the chorus, and it was always super effective. And then he comes to us, he says, "I'm really trying to get into coaching, so I would love to work with you guys." And especially as we started doing comedy, we were like, we really want to, it's like obviously we want to coach them because he has that whole actor training background, and he understands. We also share the same humor, so that's helpful. We could do a lot of stupid stuff, and if we get Will to laugh pretty hard, that's a good indicator of like this will probably be pretty funny. So we still work with Will quite a lot. Outside of that, I would say our other biggest coach we ever had was Scott Kitzmiller. We started working with him after in 2015, right after Instant Classic won. We did their Cardinal Harmony Explosion Camp. And we talked to Scott afterward and said, "No, I worked with these guys. Like, we'd love to bring you out and work with you." So getting to work with him has been a treat too, because for him it's also a learning experience. He'd never had to coach a quartet that did comedy really. We also tried something that worked really well, which was he and Will work really well together when they coach, which is a very fortunate thing because they both share a lot of the same mind in terms of having it be like what's going to create the most impact and what's going to be the most effective. But then obviously Scott every now and then will remind us a little bit more on musicality stuff, and then Will obviously go a little more in the performance. But they both speak a lot of the same language and work in a lot. So that was really, really cool that we're like, can we try this and see if it works? And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But it was really cool that it worked out. So I would say those are our main two. Outside of that, we've met with some people on and off. We had one coaching session with Steve Scott before this year's International, and it was life-changing. So we want to keep working with him. But there's other people, we want to try out and try to find. Obviously, now that we have Dan here, Dr. Dan Wessler, who's now living in California directing Westminster, I'm going to start meeting with him as a plan too. So
yeah, that doesn't suck.
It doesn't suck at all. Doesn't suck in the slightest.
Yeah.
So Jake's like, I'm gonna learn so much. He's like, I'm gonna learn so much from how to. I'm like, yes, man, absorb as much as you can.
On this show, we call Scott the quartet whisperer. That's what we call him on here.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the whole trick with coaching that he and Will, and I mean all the best ones do, they know, they can recognize what works with not just quartets but the individuals in each quartet and how to get them all to function together, right? That's the whole trick, and they're really
Yeah.
good at kind of pinpointing small things to say or things that they latch on, like, oh, this person, he generally thinks a lot more about the performance, but this person thinks a lot more about how the singing goes and how do I make sure they speak the same language, and so yeah, it's a wonderful product of
Yeah.
Scott. He's awesome at that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a good one for you. This is one of my favorite questions to ask on the show.
Okay.
Kind of gives us, uh, like an Ed TV version. Like we'd like for you to walk us through like a day in your life, and it could be a day where like you have work maybe and you have a quartet rehearsal or a Westminster rehearsal or something. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, I work in and out, and my schedule changes week to week. So my work schedule is never consistent. But a day in my life would be getting up. I've been really trying to work out a lot more, although these last 2 days I have not. But I've been on when COVID hit, I took it as a saying, okay, when I come out the other end of this, I'm just gonna be a healthier person. And so I really just started developing a workout routine. And so I do a workout. It's either weightlifting or it's or going for a run. I kind of switch it off every other day. And then from there, I will, depending on when I have to go into work, I'll go into work. A lot of times it's closing, so In and Out closes very late, so sometimes it's just a late night. But I know that going in, so I try to plan that out in my day. And then more recently, the other kind of big things that I do, I do a little bit of mindfulness exercises, either in journaling or I do sometimes some meditation, just kind of what feels best that day. But I like to journal and kind of write my thoughts down of just like what's my plan for the day. And then also lately streaming. So I try to find a time to stream, and then like I'm trying to just build up my branding that way of, I'll record a stream and then I'll put stuff out on my YouTube channel afterward, and stuff like that. And then if quartet rehearsal happens that day at some point, I make sure I prepare for that and kind of get my thought. We're pretty good and diligent about saying, all right, what are the main targets we got to hit for this week or this rehearsal? Because we've gotten to a point now where even though we live next to each other, I know other quartets talking to groups like First Take, they all live in different states, or they live far apart, so they really buckle down about like planning not only their rehearsal time but their fun time. So we're fortunate enough to where we can be a little more sporadic with it, but even then we're just like, okay, what do we need to knock out this week, because we have this gig coming up. For instance, even the example, we're going to rehearse this week, we have a church gig we're doing on Sunday, and we're like, okay, we need to go over these songs because we haven't sung them in a while. And, a lot of religious songs they're great, but it's like, oh, we haven't sung these in a minute, so let's make sure we tackle these, and do these kinds of things. So, and then a typical rehearsal, we warm up, tackle what we need to tackle. Sometimes we'll specify small sections, small spots that are really intense, and then we kind of say, what's the biggest focus of it? Sometimes it's singing, sometimes it's performance, and obviously music. That's pretty much the day.
How often do you guys meet?
We're trying to meet. At least once a week. We should be meeting at least twice a week. But we definitely took a break because of international, and then Jake and I had Harmony U, which was great. But now we're kind of ramping back up and getting the ball rolling for next year, earlier than we ever have. So we're gonna try and get ahead of the curve a little more this year and see what happens for a contest.
Okay, right on. Is there any news about a newfangled CD?
That's a good question. Actually, we did just have a business meeting last week. So to answer another question, we do have times where we're just like, we just need to have a business meeting to go over the next 6 months. It's not even quartet rehearsal. And in that business meeting, we definitely talked about, okay, we have so much stuff for CDs. We could make like 2 more easily. So it's like and we went through a process of saying, what tracks do we want? And we all kind of voted on it. And then I said, we kind of talked about, do we want it to be a CD of just hits? Because we have a lot of contest hits that have been recorded. Or do we kind of want to make sure if we're going to have multiple CDs, we don't want to have one CD be incredibly amazing and the next one just kind of be a little bit more of a dud comparatively, just in terms of not having all, so we went through these kinds of talks. And so, yes, there is groundwork happening for it. figuring out where we're going to record, how we're going to record and mix it, and all that kind of stuff. We're going through those details right now. But yes, finally, after many years, talks have happened. There are things in motion to at least get the ball rolling on it.
Very cool.
Yeah. One thing I was really proud of our last CD. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you get a 2-year grace period because of COVID, so we give you a 2-year allowance to not do anything with.
But the last one came out in 2017. The last one came out in 2017. We need to get back on the grind. It's been many a year since we've even made one.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
We'll give you a 6-year grace period.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's very kind of you.
One's pretty good. This is one of my favorite questions to ask of all time.
Okay.
If you could build a fantasy quartet around yourself, not using any of your coming quartet mates, who would it be?
Oh God!
Start with yourself. What part would you sing?
Fantasy quartet? This is a good question.
Yes.
Man. Okay. Well, just to keep just to keep up, I'd probably sing lead, even though I'm definitely not. I am not my favorite lead. Because the other parts, I would want to at least have the quartet sound as good as possible, and I wouldn't be as good in other parts. I'd be fine, but like not, I've had the most practice. So I'll put myself on lead egotistically, just because I think that'll make the most sense.
All right.
Whew. This is a good question. Let's see. I mean, honestly, it's almost as cliche as it's almost just the fantasy quartet the Society put together years ago, because I mean that's one of my favorites. But to make things interesting, I'll change it up a little bit more.
Okay.
I'll change it a little bit. So I'm gonna put Dan Wessler on bass. I think just because I've gotten to sing him a few times now that he's in a just like this ridiculous voice. You can all hear it and know it. So that's just my first thought. On baritone, gosh, I mean, I have to put Tony. Tony's just amazing. He's ridiculous, and the fact that he's singing with his son and still has a voice of meddling first time. I mean, that quartet's incredible.
Yeah,
and he's just keeping up. There's no him not keeping up in that group. You know what I mean? I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's really okay. He's pretty much the most common answer, so I think we'll have to allow that one for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like
now you need a tenor.
I know. I'm stuck on Tim Warwick, but I there's other people who are fantastic on tenor. You know who I will put? I will put this one. And he doesn't sing with the quartet anymore, but Alexander Lofstedt, the previous tenor of Lemon Squeezy.
Yeah, you are the third person to say that. Yeah.
He's an absolute stud on tenor. So that's a random assortment because I could just give the same answer, but like I'll make that one. That'd be an okay quartet. I think do pretty well.
Yeah. No, dude, there's so many answers for that too. It's like
how do you pick?
Voicing do I want?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. What do you want out of it?
And then it's like, well, what if you could only sing ballads? Does that change your answer? And it's like, yeah,
it would.
Of course it does.
That
and then
changes
it's like,
completely.
then I need Theo Hicks. Yeah,
exactly.
And then you have to change everything.
Yep.
I'll take Fred Farrell on tenor at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like everything changes.
Everything changes hard.
But yeah, no, good answers, man. Yeah, good answers. Here's the toughest question I'm probably going to ask you.
Okay.
Who's going to win in Cleveland this year?
Who's going to win in Cleveland? I mean, I think Squeezy. I think Squeezy has every chance to win. I mean, literally, the medalists are all the next. I think 3.5 Men. The way they just jumped into 4, their work ethic and knowing how Tony works, I would not be surprised if they just made the jump.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be that could be the one. Honestly, like I think Squeezy. Yeah. I think Squeezy should with the right work ethic, and I mean not that they don't work, but you know what I mean. Like with the right, the hardest part about it is like it's what happens that week. That's the craziest thing about that people forget. That day, how does your voice feel? Now you gotta do it for 3 rounds. How does your voice feel that round? You're singing this song. Do you remember all these things? But when are you singing? When are you ready to sing now? It's like, well, yeah, but we're not. We're not till the end of the contest. It's like, or we have an early morning.
Mm-hmm.
Throwback this year, their quarterfinals. I think they sang like 4th or 5th of the whole contest. So you're singing it like 10 a.m. If you flew in a day or two before, you only have so many hours to get used to the time period. Plus, singing in the morning is just terrible. Like, everyone can agree, we all hate singing in the morning. Your voice just needs hours to, like, it's okay, but it's just not the same as your voice needs a few hours to just naturally warm up over the course of a day to where it feels more primed.
Yeah.
So that's always tricky. So I mean, all those factors. I would say probably 3.5 men. I would not be surprised. But
yeah. Although it's funny, I think Throwback was my favorite set. Was their first one, their quarterfinal set.
Yeah. Okay.
And that may be because it was their new songs too. You know,
that helps. That does help. Yeah.
I mean, but
yeah. So I would say
they were
them,
in good voice.
Yeah, I would say anyone could, any of those top 5, and who knows, and maybe we won't get 6 this year. Who knows? There might be a chance.
All right. Well, we certainly hope you do very well.
It's going to be what's going to be.
We got Round Midnight coming back. That's going to be excellent because we missed them this year.
Dude, Round Midnight, GQ. I made the joke. I made the joke right
GQ.
After the ladies. I made the joke right after finals. I was like, well, Midtown's gone, so next year, a spot opened up, and I was like, well, Round Midnight and GQ and the ladies are probably going to come back, and then Jeff Oxley's singing bass with Clutch, and they've always been. I don't remember if they made the 10 in 2022 because I wasn't there, but I know they've always been knocking on the door. There's a bunch of, I mean, it's just getting tougher and tougher, and it's great. The audience wins, the society gets better. So I want to make sure this is clear. I am not bitter about getting 6th another time. I am 100%. I'm like, no, that's the correct answer. Or even if we got 7th, 8th, and that, because it's such a tight contest. Like, you just can't. You know what I mean? It's more of just, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, these are the best quartets in the world. Yeah. It's very cool.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions, do you sleep with your college medal
on? The first night, I actually don't think I ever have. I really wanted to the night we won 10 years ago, which is weird to say, but still true. Mm-hmm. But the night we won, I was thinking about doing it, but I was also so petrified because I can kind of move in my sleep, and I didn't want to roll on it and break it the night I got it. So I have not slept with it on. No. But almost.
Right. So the night you won, man, some people that I have on the show, they have extremely vivid memories and can tell me every room they went to and everything they did. And some people are like, man, it's all a haze. I remember hearing my name and I don't remember the next 20 minutes. Right. So where do you lie in that kind of scale there?
I would say closer to remembering most of it, not all of it. I remember the call off. I remember where we sat. If you're looking at the stage in the arena, we sat high up on the left, very close to the stage. I remember being there, the 4 of us just kind of sitting there waiting for the call off. And we felt like we had a pretty good hit, and we were coming in, I'm pretty sure first, like in terms of score, and so, or maybe even second, but like top 2 or 3. And I was like, cool, we have a chance to win this, but you never know. The quartet that got 4th, because Kevin Keller did the call off, was called the New Edition. So the way Kevin said it was the new, and then I had a heart attack, and he said edition, and I was like, okay. And not because I wouldn't have been happy getting 4th. It was just more of like the way he paused, right? It's just like, just like you're killing me, dude. And then we get closer and closer, and they call 2nd, and I'm looking at the guys, and I'm like, oh, did we just actually just do this? Like, seriously? Because I hear about the college contest. I see my first one in 2011. I don't qualify in 2012, and then 2013, we happen to win the whole thing, and it was just an absolute amazing experience. What I remember is we go on stage, we get our medals, we took a couple of great pictures. Sean York is there taking some pictures, and then pretty much right afterward, we went straight to Westminster rehearsal, because Westminster was competing that year with the infamous soliloquy set, and so but I was so excited for that contest and so like just anxious in a good way about it. The couple of nights leading up to it, because we flew in that day. We flew in from LA to Toronto. I took a flight at like 5 or 6 in the morning. We get into Toronto around like 3 p.m. local time. Contest starts at 5. And then I'm running on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep because I couldn't sleep. I'm like, tomorrow's the day. I've been waiting for this day for, a year. I'm like super excited.
Yeah.
And so I remember afterward, I go over, and Will Lagos comes up to me, and I'm wearing my medal, and I'm sitting there with this expression of just like, I can't process what's happening right now because I'm so tired and so excited. My body's just going in every direction emotionally. And so I'm kind of just sit there with this dead face with the medal on. And Will comes up to me. He's like, dude, are you okay? You just won. I'm like, I know. I can't process this right now. And I'm so tired. And I should mention, obviously, we come back and we go into our chorus rehearsal room, and the chorus just goes nuts for us, and they're sharing, and it was a wonderful, wonderful moment. So that's what I remember most about it. And singing tags that night, just not too late, but I'm celebrating a little bit, and just I remember the first time I obviously put it on and took the picture was amazing, and then when I put it on with just kind of like regular clothes, I was like, this is weird. This is cool, but very weird.
Yeah.
So that was a wonderful moment. Yeah.
Now, at that time, man, when you walked in that room, you had like 7 other college gold medalists in that room too, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, because counting Joey, right?
Yeah, Joey. And at that point, we had
like Swan was in there, right? I mean,
yeah, Matt Swan, Johnny. For college golds, we had a lot of college medalists. There's some jokes with Westminster, or future ones like Kyle. You know, the Flightline guys were in it for most part, but they hadn't won yet. And then. Johnny Tillery, the lead of the Vagrants, Joey's first college gold.
Vagrants,
so he was in there, I'm pretty sure. But then also, you have the OC Times guys, right? So you have those guys, and then just the Westminster guys who you look up to. But there's a joke in Westminster with a lot of those guys when like Justin Miller, and those guys, when they were in the college contest, a lot of them, or his quartet, got fourth like twice or 3 times. Yeah. So it's just funny how he was just like, hey, you didn't get fourth. That's like, that's just like, that's very funny. Yeah. So.
Oh man. Okay, here we go. If you're gonna show somebody who's never heard Barbershop before any YouTube video, which one would it be?
This is tough because selfishly, and the only reason I would say the first thing I think of is Newfangled Hello My Baby, and the only reason that is because at International and HU this year combined, I had probably around 20 to 30 different people stop me and say, hey, Newfangled 4, right? And he's like, yeah, I love you guys. I'm here. I found you guys on YouTube, and that's why I sing Barbershop. And it's the most humbling, awesome thing to have. Like, I never in a million years when doing Hello My Baby or doing, all this stuff, did I ever think a YouTube algorithm would take off, that all these people would see it, and that it would get these people in I mean, like, it's like this dumb thing we did one night. So to have that actually come back and see the proof of the pudding, kind of, or whatever, whatever the saying is, but to actually see the evidence come back, I mean, that's insane to me. If it's not Newfangled, which it is totally justifiable, I would probably say Pop Songs, Main Street, just because those songs are songs that people can relate to, right? So and it's a fantastic performance, and they sing it so well. So I would say one of those two, because I think something that's relatable and digestible in terms of what's happening. You could show them a lot of, you're lucky with certain people. Like I got into it because of Crossroads Lucky Old Son, but I'm a person who studied music and was at college for music and already had some prior experience of listening to some Barbershop. So my ear was kind of already a little bit attuned for it. If you're just going to if you're going to hit someone in the face with Barbershop, very first thing they've ever seen, I would say Pop Songs medley, probably.
That's very cool. Yeah. I mean, we get very common answers on the podcast, like, like Notre Dame and
Notre Dame's also a great one. Yeah.
It only takes a moment, Westminster set, or like From Now On. We get a ton of the same answers over and over again. So it was good to hear yours.
Yeah.
I think the only issue is nobody really knows. Hey, why is Zimmerman coming on stage? Who's this guy?
Yeah.
Who's gonna rap? I don't understand why there's 5 of them. So I love that Mike's test set though. I thought it was hilarious. Obviously, most did. And I'd say, when the COVID hit, man, people really did just fall into like a YouTube stratosphere, if you will,
right?
Where we're starting to see kids just come out and be like, oh yeah, I found GQ on YouTube, so I joined Barbershop. And it's like, that is awesome.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I just think, we haven't even seen yet the ceiling of YouTube of new members joining or going to a convention. So that's pretty wicked cool.
Yeah.
Here's a good one for you.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work when you guys get a new chart, right? And I guess specifically what we're asking about is like Bartholomew and Supercalifragilistic.
Sure.
So does he just like write it and send it to you and go, here, this would be good for you? Or like, like how does it roll?
Right. Yeah. It's we get this question a lot, and then I totally get it because we've had to just figure it out over time. How it usually rolls is either myself or Joey or one of our arrangers, or sometimes just a random person has an idea for a song. In the quartet, it's usually Joey or me. But we say, hey, wouldn't it be funny if this, blah, blah, blah. So with Super Cal, I think Joey just always wanted that song. It's like one of his favorite songs ever, and he always thought it'd be just a fun arrangement, for what I remember. And so he went to Anthony, and Anthony comes up with sometimes with the storyline of things for that one. One I can tell you a little bit better about would be Jackson, just because that was my idea. I was in the shower one day, and Gaston came up, and I just said my name like that. I said Jackson. I was like, oh, that's kind of, and I was like, light bulb moment. I was like, wait, hold on. And so I go to Anthony, and I was like, hey man, can you do Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, but call it Jackson? And he's like, can I make fun of you? I'm like, yes, I encourage it. That's the whole point. He's like, perfect. So what you hear that we do on stage is mostly his idea, like mostly what he's written down. With Anthony, because of his brilliance of coming up with some of this stuff, he wrote so much stuff, we had to edit stuff out. There's so many quick jokes he tries to like leave in and stuff like that. And I just look at him and say, do we have to breathe at some point? we can't just say joke after joke after joke, as much as I would love to. It's also a balancing act of if everything's funny, nothing's funny, right? So you got to know how to in the course of a song kind of program those moments as best you can that are going to be the high funny moments, like this should be a real killer joke, this one's going to be funny but shouldn't necessarily just be the funniest thing you've ever heard, because that's not what's supposed to happen there, that kind of stuff. And then from there, so we'll alter things, we'll change things up where needed. Sometimes we're very lucky to kind of have within the quartet kind of a complete set of how do I say this? Just like every guy kind of brings their own different specialties to it. For instance, whenever we need some chords turned around or changed a little bit, Jake's really good at that because he plays piano. So he kind of has, and we've all heard his amazing tags. So very quickly we'll be like, we'll hear some chords sometimes that arrangers will give us, and we're like, I wonder if we can. I'm like, Jake, can we just make that chord? I'm like, it's whatever it is. It's like some sort of extension chord. I'm just like, can we just make it? Are we able to just make that a dominant 7, or can we change it to just make it a ring a little bit easier for us? Because right now it's every time we've sung it, it's fine, but I want that moment to shine. And so he might just alter a few notes and change a few things there. And so we've kind of gotten good at also with rewriting stuff that way too. So it just kind of, it really depends. And then pretty much all of our learning tracks are with Cole Kitzmiller. Obviously, with his own arrangements, he makes them ready to go. When not, I just say, can you get these learning tracks to us? And he cranks them out so fast, and they're just such great quality.
He does,
So, so our main arrangers would be Anthony, Cole, and Patrick. We had David do Spoonful, but those are the kind of like the main, David Zimmerman. Those are kind of the main three, and for us, it's 99% of the time, it's like this year, Joey he always wanted to do Insecurities. He had that idea a couple years ago. And he said, he wanted to give it to Anthony, and Anthony couldn't do it, so he gave it to Patrick. Or maybe he even just went to Patrick first. But Patrick it's funny because when we first reached out to these guys, we're like, don't feel like you have to make it the funniest thing ever. We can try and edit some stuff to do that. Just if you think it's kind of funny, go with it. And what I found through all of them, we knew Anthony was funny, but especially with Cole and PMAC, we found like, oh no, you guys have good jokes like that you put in here. We edit a few of them that we think are better, but they're still, the basis of it is really funny. So blessed to have in our corner really, really talented arrangers who can help make our visions come true. Truly.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but sometimes when we read the comments, man, it's really amazing. The parts that people find the funniest are not the loudest or most appropriate parts of the songs. Like I know on oh man, I don't know if it's Tango in 2015 or whatever. But there's a part where Ryan just stops and he says, "I hate you guys."
Yeah.
And that seems to be the favorite comment
Yeah.
on that entire video. And then, of course, you get some of the music nerds. I don't know if you get real in depth reading the comments, but when you guys open SuperCal, you have when you say you have a new idea or whatever, and everybody says, "What is it?" behind you.
Yeah.
That chord has never been the same in every performance that you guys do that we have on record. So sometimes it's a 9 chord, sometimes it's a stacked 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny that some of the music nerds are going, "Well, what chord is actually written there?"
Yeah.
Somebody did the transcription. I don't know if you know this stuff, but like people transcribe your videos and they write what they hear in there. And there's like a bunch of X's over those couple of notes, meaning I don't know.
I mean, what's funny is, that's also on us because we should be singing it super clean every time. But it's a hard part because they're switching octaves very quickly for half a second.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they just slightly miss. And yeah, it is true. It's just like I've seen some of those. I know that at least I see the one guy. I think his name is like Jason Feeler, right, on YouTube. And I've seen his stuff where he transcribes a lot of Barbershop, which is really, really cool. And yeah, he's done a couple of our videos, and I'm always just like, that's really cool, And I remember on one of them it was one of Anthony's. It might have been just SuperCal. And I remember reading one of Anthony's comments, which was just like, you could have just asked me for the music. He was like, you could have just bought the chart. It wouldn't have been that expensive. But it's funny.
Yeah.
Which is not a slight.
I just think it's hilarious.
Oh, it's great. No, it's totally funny. What a world we live in. That people are like, no, but it's this chord this time and this chord this time, and I'm like, I feel like they sing it mostly the same each time, but it's probably a little off because that's a tricky part, and the fact that people find just the tiniest part of the joke. One thing that I love about our arrangements is that we want to make sure that what we sing is effective first time out. But ideally, if we can, we also want to have a couple of jokes that you're just going to get on the repeat viewings if you do repeat watch or if people scroll back. We love having stuff like that just kind of like, if you are a person who's going to watch it a couple times, hopefully you find some new stuff about it that just a couple of small things every now and then, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think we do, man. I think everybody kind of feels that way. Like, my daughter, she loves to watch Newfangled. In fact, I brought her to Raleigh Durham to see you guys.
Nice.
Team and did that Bull City Slam.
Yeah.
And like her favorite part of the whole entire performance is when Ryan, steps out and says, "The information superhighway," and she's like, "That's the best part." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, he's the only one that doesn't really tell jokes." And it appears from the audience that he has a very dry sense of humor,
right?
And it's just something he would say, and it's so awesome that Anthony wrote it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a coincidence or not. It comes through so hard.
Yeah.
Well,
part of that also, we can get into it, but not necessarily have to if we don't want to. But big part of something I preach is whereas, and people will see it this way, where it's like we've had coachings where they're like, well, Joey's the comedian, the clown, and Ryan's the straight guy, and Jake, and I'm like, well, yeah, maybe in this song, but for me, it's all about what does the song require, because in Jack's song, I have to play the part of the guy being talked about, the main, and I'm playing the character of just basically Gaston, but as me. So I kind of have this whole attitude of that. In other songs, I don't know if I ever actually really play a straight guy, like the straight man, but it's more of just like we did Joe Ray Me this year. The song's all about Joey. So it's like, how do we? Yeah. And I get upset with him. I get frustrated because he can't figure. So it's like understanding that's what's needed for the character of the song. It's not because my character is that all the time. I feel like that's just I feel like it's a different thing, and like that's something that I think going forward, I would love to see more quartets do, of just saying it's like your comedy quartet doesn't have to always be the one guy's always the funny guy necessarily. It could just be what is needed in that song at that point, and that's the kind of thing I love talking about. Yeah. So it is great when it works out that way.
Man, it comes through for sure. Like when you tell your plantains joke, or for lack of a better word,
Yes.
your oops of the thing.
Right.
If you did that every single time on every single song, it would go, oh yeah, here comes Jackson's thing.
Yeah.
So
Here.
I really dig that it changes from person to person.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, I don't want to do the dang it joke every time, otherwise it's a little predictable, and then it's like, it's funny,
Yeah,
but it's
it's pretty great.
you know,
I also like that this year, over there in Louisville, they
yes,
tell me it's called
yeah,
Louisville,
Louisville.
that you guys introduced Marcus on stage for real, and he just did that. Hi guys, the little wave.
Yeah,
So I think that gives us a good segue here to say, well, you got a new baritone.
yes, we do,
So
Marcus Carline. So Marcus,
yeah, so
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
it's all right. What's going on? What happened?
Yeah, so
Why do we have a new baritone?
we have a new baritone. So we got to a point where, truthfully, right before it was like February or January of 2020, and we're rehearsing, and I was getting a little burnt out. Ryan was getting a little burnt out. We were literally saying, okay, it's gonna be in LA 2020. Let's give this one last chance to give throw all the marbles at it. Really put in 110%, and then COVID hit. And so we're like, okay, so now we got to kind of reassess. What do we want to do? We're already kind of in this weird kind of morphing shape thing. Because I was definitely at a point too where I was getting a little burnt out and I needed a break. And I mean, truthfully, COVID kind of provided that. And so what happened, and a lot of people was like, why did Ryan leave? And so when the quartet started, we started as, and I said it earlier, like, let's go win the college contest. And then we did, which was awesome. And then we're like, well, okay, well, what do we do now? Oh, well, we can do our district contest locally. Oh, okay, cool. Let's go do that. And then that same year we won it. Again, very cool, but it's also like, what do we do now? I guess we do the big boy contest, right? So then we start working on that, and we're doing it. And it's a lot of fun. We start getting a lot of gigs, a lot of gigs, and I love it. Jake loves it. Ryan was never the biggest fan of that because he really just wanted to do this, be in the quartet, and this is really just his fun side thing that I love doing. And so as we started getting more and more gigs, and I wanted to take them all because that's kind of where I would love my job to be. My ultimate dream would be Newfangled is what I'm doing full time, whether it be contests or whatever, and different tours and stuff. That's what I would love to do. It's what I'm trying to figure out in life. And that's just not where his heart is at. And that's kind of where it came down to it's eventually it just kind of became, he said, you know what, I'm good from leaving the quartet, and obviously with COVID, so he moved to Texas and he's doing great out there and coaching at the VM and singing with them and doing a lot of stuff there, and he seems very, very happy. It was just kind of a different, parting of interests is all it really came down to. No hatred for the guy. I love him to death. So,
to be fair, I mean, the dude was married too. He was the only one of you guys that was married.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a different stress
he had
too.
other things going on. Yeah.
And well, it's also just like, what he wants in life is, Yeah. So he wanted to learn those things. So he just had different goals of what he wanted in his life, and so we're like, okay. And then we took a break for a while. We were talking, the three of us, like, do we want to go back to contest? We kind of were like, I don't know if we really want to go back to contest, because people were so confused. They're like, are they retiring? We said, no, we just retired for a little bit from contest, because we were just like, it would just feel weird to go straight back into it with a different guy. We got to figure out who we want. So then we were like, after a while, we were kind of talking, and we were starting to get, we're doing videos online with substitute baritones and with Cole, a few with Cole and some other stuff. And we're like, well, do we want to keep doing this and doing gigs? Like, yeah, we need a new baritone. So we never had like open auditions or anything like that. We had a list of about 3 or 4 different people, and not all of them were, superstar baritones who would love to do it, because what we were looking for was someone who was local. We were like, what's most important? Well, these are the criteria. And so one of them was that they had to be local, wanted someone nearby. And so Marcus had subbed on a gig or two every now and then. And so we were like, hey, what about Marcus? And we auditioned with him and talked to them, and we've known him since college. He's a good friend of ours. His whole barbershop story, and if you're going to have him on, I'll let him tell you more about it. But I'll very briefly, it's like he never really did too much formal barbershop. He sang in Boomtown Chorus in 2014 that Joey directed for the youth contest in Long Beach. And we were all part of it. So he sang in that with us, but that was pretty much it. And then he's an amazing complete musician though. Like he He and Jake
Yeah.
sang in a group called Pacific Standard Time, which is at Cal State Long Beach, like their premier vocal jazz group. And so they sang together a bunch there. They've sung in a bunch of other gigs around town in LA, in the LA area. So, and Marcus and I took a lot of classes together. Very similar sense of humor and sensibilities. So I was like, this is a perfect fit. We figured this out. I would love this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how he came into the fold. And I was not worried in the slightest, you know. And having him come back, I was more just worried like, hey, you're gonna meet a lot of people that we've known for many, many years. So you're just going to be on digesting this whole international Louisville. He was, he was on like learning where everyone is from and how and connections and this person's with that. And I was kind of every now and then just talking to him, be like, ask me any questions and I'll help you, you know, trace all the lines and connect the dots and figure it all out. So he's just running with it and doing a fantastic job. I could not be more proud of that guy. He's incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah, I sent him a message, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, he'll come on the show and we'll all get to meet him personally.
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
Because, you know, you guys have been at this now for a lot of years, like 10, 11, 12, whatever years, you know.
Yeah.
And it's very cool, like, you know, for the people to kind of get to know you off the contest stage, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of the whole point of this podcast, just like, hey, man, you know, everybody's human. You know, it doesn't matter if it's Tony DeRosa or you know, just a barbershopper, you know.
Yeah.
They all pay the same amount for gas. So it's like
yes.
we hope we can get everybody on the show, but
for sure.
We'll see if Marcus answers and we get him on and you know, this season would be cool.
I'll give him a little push.
That was my way of getting you to give him the push.
Yeah,
there we go.
There you go. You did it.
Cool. All right. So at the end of every show, man, we have a little something we call a lightning round,
Okay.
right? Where I ask you like 10 really quick questions and you just give me the quickest answer that comes to mind. And for you, I have to change one of the questions.
Okay.
Which is normally I ask people, you know, Roninga or Westminster. But since you're in Westminster, we're going to take that one away and I'll add a totally new one. All right. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. 9 chords or Chinese sevens?
Oof. Chinese sevens.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Burgers or chicken wings?
Burgers.
Ballads or uptunes?
Ballads.
Beer or liquor?
Beer.
Who is your favorite championship quartet?
Crossroads.
Who's your favorite arranger?
Theo Hicks.
What is your favorite movie?
The Big Lebowski.
Nice. What is your favorite non-barbershop music to listen to?
Right now, I would say like new soul pop, if that makes sense.
Okay. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Nothing But a Good Time by Poison.
And finally, my favorite, how many children will the Newfangled Four have in 10 years?
Oh, God.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, honestly, I easily could be 0. I'll say 1 to be safe.
No, right on. That's cool. You know, because I want to have First Take on, and they just, of course, took that picture in Louisville with, like, all the kids that, like, you know, because Andrew and Tony have, you know, and Drew and everybody has little kids. So I thought that would be an interesting question for Newfangled.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we only see, like, relationship status of whatever you guys put on Facebook.
Right.
It doesn't look so good right now.
No.
You know where we go.
Yeah, but you never know. Stuff happens in 10 years, and you know, that's. I mean, that kind of.
No, that's
kind of like it leads into the kind of what the whole thing with Ryan and like with Marcus. It's like people change over 10 years. You know, that's another big part of that. Is just like when Ryan and I met and when the quartet we all met. It's like we're very different people then than we are now, and that just happens. You know, with life, it's nothing against anyone. It's just like, oh, we just have different tendencies or different thoughts about how things work, and none of them are right or wrong. It's all in the eye of the beholder. And so yeah, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years, you know? I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll have 5 kids without realizing it. And then it's like, oh, well, there we are.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to thank you for being on the show, man. I hope you had a pretty good time.
I had a fantastic time. Thanks for having me, man. And I hope people were able to learn a little bit about myself and a little bit about Newfangled 4 and yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, very cool, man. We'll post this episode, you know, and I'll tag you a whole bunch of times and stuff, so you know you'll be able to know the second it drops. And
perfect,
man. We're just happy to have you on, and I thank you for being such an awesome guest.
Of course, man. Again, thanks for having me, and I look forward to hearing it.
Sweet. All right, I hit stop over here.